The immortal gauntlet hadn't opened in over 4 centuries. Once it had been a proving ground for civilizations. A combat arena older than most languages in the galaxy. Not just a contest of strength, but of dominance, of evolution, of empire. The last time it was activated, the winners seized entire sectors. The losers had their species classified as non-competitive for a generation, and now it was open again. It started with a pulse, one that echoed through the FTL relays and quantum lattice comms across 6,000 light-years. A coded challenge, ancient and undeniable. The arena on Jaris Prime had rebooted. The Tri-Galactic Council convened within hours. 3 empires stood at its core. The Orc Dominion, whose warriors were bred in fusion crucibles and armored in living steel. The Vexari Swarm, a psionic hive mind with trillions of soldiers that saw war as song. The Dravari Dominion, the oldest. Of them all, ruthless architects of perfection who ruled with genetic tyranny and philosophical fire. All 3 accepted the challenge. Every other race, over 80 council-aligned civilizations, stood silent, watching, whispering, until Earth responded. Transmission, short and infuriatingly casual. Humanity accepts. "We'll send one!" The council chamber erupted in laughter. "One!" roared the Uric warlord. "We offer champions sculpted by war gods, and they offer a specimen?" The Dravari ambassador didn't laugh. He simply leaned back in his seat, curious. The Vexari hummed discordant psychic tones, half amused, half predatory. The announcers had a field day. Betting houses set astronomical odds, 10,000 to 1 against the human surviving even the first round. Some called it a publicity stunt. Others thought it might be a diplomatic suicide attempt. No one expected him to arrive early. On day 1 of the arena's reawakening, as Titanic ships carved with war runes descended from orbit, a civilian transport slipped into the dock like a rat among wolves. No escorts, no fanfare. The human walked out alone, no armor, no support crew. Just a plain black shirt, dusty cargo pants, and a duffel bag slung over one shoulder. He looked ordinary, messy black hair. A few scars, lean, tall, maybe early 30s by human reckoning. He walked like someone used to uneven terrain and too many regrets. His name was listed as Kale Stratus, no titles, no rank. Former combat engineer, current deep space salvager. The crowd watching via stream across the galaxy was confused. Was this the real contender? Security bots scanned him. No implants, no external tech. His blood work was equally unremarkable. Aside from a dense cluster of nanites operating at sub-sentient levels, standard human emergency medical AI. Harmless. "What is this, a joke?" asked a Vexari commentator. In the arena command booth, the Dravari systems engineer ran the scans twice. Then again, something was off. His neurosynaptic activity was normal, but his reaction profiling wasn't. It fluctuated, rapidly, as if Kale's brain was constantly adjusting to unseen threats. They chalked it up to pre-combat anxiety. Then came the opening ceremony. Each empire paraded its champions, 10-foot-tall Uric brutes, Vexari psychic tacticians riding in floating, biocysts and Dravari duelists grown in zero-G vats. The audience roared for each one. When Kale walked onto the platform, alone, there was silence. Then laughter. He didn't react. Just stretched his arms behind his head and yawned. That's when someone noticed something strange. His vitals hadn't spiked. No stress, no adrenaline surge. His heart rate was steady. Even when the Uric champion, Corin the Butcher, whose fists could cave in blast doors, walked toward him for the first match, Kale didn't blink. Instead, he smirked and rolled his shoulders like he was about to fight a sparring bot back home. The match was set. The gates closed. And across the galaxy, no one yet realized that a very old rule was about to be rewritten. The arena rumbled as the gates slammed shut. A silence fell, not peaceful but electric, expectant. The crowd spread across 5 moons, and dozens of orbital viewing stations leaned in. Even in the council chambers, dignitaries paused their posturing to watch. This was supposed to be a bloodbath. Koran the Butcher emerged like a walking mountain. 9 feet tall, plated in volcanic armor that writhed with living fungus, he moved with the grinding weight of a glacier. His left arm was a fusion hammer grafted straight into bone. His right fist was bare. He preferred to feel his enemies. Skullcrack, Koran had ended 17 wars. Kale Stratus barely looked up as his opponent entered. He stood still, arms loose at his sides, eyes half-lidded. No combat stance, no tension in the shoulders. If anything, he looked bored. Koran snarled. "You mock the arena meat thing?" Kale's voice crackled through the comms, dry and amused. "You talk too much?" The crowd howled. Insult before. The first blow. Classic pre-death arrogance. The gong sounded. Koran charged, every step pounding cracks into the arena floor. He raised his hammer arm, a blur of red energy building at its core, and swung down with enough force to crater a tank. Kyle wasn't there. He had moved, not blinked, not dashed, moved with the grace of a falling feather. One sidestep, a twist of the hips, a fluid arc like wind weaving through rubble. Koran's hammer smashed the ground, sending debris flying. He roared and pivoted, already swinging his other arm. Kale ducked, slipped under the punch like it was part of a dance. 2 seconds had passed. The audience's cheers dimmed. Something was wrong. Koran lunged again, faster now. His armor adapted, compensating for Kyle's speed. But Kyle wasn't just fast, he was precise. Every movement conserved. Energy. Every breath was calculated. 10 seconds. Koran was bleeding from his nose. He didn't know how it happened. 15 seconds. Kyle landed a jab, just a tap to the side of the Orc's knee. Koran stumbled. Then, like lightning breaking cloud cover, Kyle struck. He shifted his footing, dropped low, and delivered a spinning elbow into Koran's hip joint with pinpoint accuracy. The sound, crack, pop, snap, echoed through the arena like a gunshot. Koran howled in pain as his leg buckled. Kyle didn't wait. He stepped in close, under the towering brute's swing, and brought his palm upward under Koran's chin. It looked almost gentle. The impact lifted the Orc champion half a meter off the ground. He crumpled before he landed. 16 seconds. Kyle stood over him, breathing evenly. He didn't raise his fists, didn't gloat, just turned toward the stunned audience and shrugged. "First round's free," he said. Dead silence. Then the uproar began. "Fraud!" the Orc envoy bellowed. "Trickery! Poison scans! This is impossible!" The arena AI replayed the footage in slow motion, breaking it down frame by frame. No tech interference, no hidden devices, just clean biomechanics, exploiting micro-movements, pressure points, and anatomical weak spots like a predator dissecting its prey. Kale didn't use superhuman strength. He didn't need it. He just knew exactly where to strike and how to move faster than any Orc could think. Within the hour, the Dominion submitted 2 new champions, veterans, killers, both heavily modified. Kyle dismantled them. Methodically, without injury, he never raised his voice. Never showed more than mild exertion. By sundown, betting houses across the galaxy had frozen all wagers. News feeds shifted from comedy reels to military analysis. Earth's name, humanity, was no longer followed by laughter. Somewhere in the high orbit of Jaris Prime, the Vexari Queen's empathic pulse whispered one word to her children: danger. Kale Stratus sat on a steel bench in the arena's holding level, shirt off, sweat evaporating in the sterilized air. A medical drone floated nearby, projecting vitals onto a transparent screen. Pulse, 63 BPM. Oxygen levels, optimal. Injury report, 0. He rolled a tight knot out of his shoulder with a grunt and looked up as the arena AI flickered to life on a nearby display. You have a new opponent. Swarm designation. Twins of the Lattice. Vexari assassins. Bio-psionic class. Kyle didn't react. He tied his boots slowly, deliberately. Two at once? He asked. Standard Vexari bonded combat protocol. They share a neural field. He stood. Good. The twins of the Lattice floated into the arena like ghosts draped in silk and static. Thin, willowy bodies clad in mirrored armor, faces hidden behind emotionless chrome. They moved in perfect unison, no words exchanged. The audience hushed. Vexari duelists were unpredictable, fast, fluid, and utterly alien. Kyle jogged in from the opposite side, doing shoulder rolls as he moved. No armor, just dark gloves and a cloth wrap around one hand. No one knew why he wore it. No one had seen him need it. The gong sounded. The twins struck together, vanishing in a burst of light-warping blur. Kale slid sideways just in time, letting the first blade pass his throat by less than a centimeter. The second came from behind. He didn't turn. He just dropped, swept the leg, and spun away. The crowd gasped. The twins adapted instantly, forming a crisscrossing pattern of slashes, meant to trap prey in a lattice of light and pain. It had killed dozens of targets before they realized what was happening. Kale leaned into it. He stepped into their rhythm, eyes half-lidded, body flowing like smoke. One swipe grazed his arm, his shirt tore open, a shallow cut. The crowd surged, blood, human blood. The twins' neural field pulsed in unison. He bleeds, Kyle smiled. Barely. He twisted inward. The male twin lashed out with a short spear. Kale grabbed the haft mid-swing and yanked, slamming his elbow into the attacker's throat. There was a crunch, a wheeze. The female screamed, not aloud, but in Kale's mind. A psychic burst like broken glass in a thunderstorm. Kale's eyes narrowed, lips tightening, jaw clenched. He dropped to a knee, blood trickling from one nostril. For a split second, the crowd thought he was finished. Then Kale looked up. He whispered something, too low for the crowd to hear. But the female twin stopped mid-lunge. Her blade hovered an inch from his temple. Her hands shook. She turned and ran. Kyle stood, wiped his nose, and followed her at a walking pace. "You knew that name, didn't you?" he said softly. She backed away. "How do you know that word?" she asked in Vexari. Her voice cracked. "It was on a list. My sister died screaming it." Then he stepped forward and drove 2 fingers into her chest, just below the sternum between 2 ribs. She convulsed and fell limp. Silence. No cheers. No commentary. Just a stunned audience and a new question echoing across the stars. Who taught this human how to kill like that? In the council chamber, the Vexari queen went quiet. Her second mind reached into the swarm's archive. The word Kale had spoken, a forbidden phrase, a swarm death trigger, had not been used in 6 generations. Its knowledge was buried. Earth should not have known it. The queen ordered an emergency cast conference. Colonies flickered with confusion. Some called for escalation, others for retreat. The swarm was splitting. In orbit, the Dravari envoy watched the footage again. He slowed it, paused, zoomed in on Kyle's hands. No implants, no cybernetic movement assists, just bone, tendon, and rage. He turned to his attaché. "Increase surveillance on the human." "For tactical analysis?" "No," the envoy said. "For genealogy. I want to know what he is." They scanned him again. This time, they didn't trust the arena's automated medical suite. The Dravari brought their own, a full-spectrum molecular profiler, neural resonance mapper, genetic codebreakers. They ran tests through 9 dimensions, and still the results came back the same. Kyle Stratus, human male. Terran origin. Baseline genome, 99.7% unmodified. No implants, no enhancements, no deviations. Yet the question hung in the sterile air of the Dravari command lab like smoke. Then how is he doing this? The swarm had withdrawn its combatants. Officially, citing spiritual dissonance, the Vexari refused to send more twins. Unofficially, they were terrified. Uric rage boiled, but none volunteered to face Kale, not after what happened to Koran. The butcher now sat in a cryopod with 3 shattered joints and a 1,000-yard stare. That left the Dravari. They didn't fear Kale. Not yet. They respected him. And the Dravari respected only one thing: potential. They chose their champion. Carefully. Prime Blade, Syrinx, grown in 0G, aged artificially in a timefold chrysalis, and trained by 1,000 lifetimes of war memory. He was more than a soldier. He was a philosophy with a sword. When Syrinx entered the arena, even the audience grew quiet. His armor was matte white, shaped to a lean elegance. His blade, folded neutronium, was named Inevitable. Kyle watched him approach, arms crossed. Syrinx stopped 10 feet away. "You're not a weapon," he said flatly. "No," Kyle replied. "I'm the result of one." Syrinx tilted his head. "Meaning?" Kyle smiled. "You'll see." The gong rang. Syrinx struck first, so fast the cameras lagged. One fluid movement. Step, draw, slash. It should have ended Kale, but he bent at the waist, letting the blade hum past his ribs, and kicked Syrinx's knee. The Dravari slid back, absorbing the strike with a twist. His face didn't move. "Impressive." Kale said nothing. He adjusted. His stance. They circled. Syrinx launched a second attack, a 5-part flurry of cuts designed to trap reflexive fighters. Kale didn't fight reflexively. He intercepted the second slash with his forearm, twisted under the third, and used the fourth to pivot into Syrinx's blind spot. He threw an elbow toward the side of Syrinx's neck, missed by a hair. Syrinx flowed back, blade spinning. "You're adapting," he murmured. "Faster than your simulations, yeah," Kale replied. By the 6th exchange, Syrinx was breathing harder. By the 10th, his blade had been knocked from his hand. But Kale hadn't finished him. He'd stepped back, waiting, watching. Syrinx retrieved Inevitable. "Why didn't you end me?" Kale's face was hard now. "Because I want to see if you—" "Figure it out." "Figure what out?" Kale's eyes narrowed. "Why I'm still breathing." Syrinx lunged again. Kale didn't dodge. He caught the blade between his palms. The crowd screamed, but the blade didn't cut. It froze, inches from his heart. Syrinx's arms trembled. Kyle whispered, "Check the readings." In the control booth, alarms lit up. Syrinx's neurodata spiked, not from Kyle's grip, from feedback, his sword's internal memory. It had scanned Kyle's cellular signature on contact, and what it saw broke its calibration. It recognized something. A fragment, a match to ancient combat logs long sealed by the Dravari Senate, footage from a war that hadn't happened in 80,000 years. The man in those logs moved like Kale, had eyes like Kale, and had stood alone against the first. "Rise of the Dravari!" Syrinx dropped his sword. Kyle let it fall. "Now you see it." "Impossible," Syrinx whispered. "You can't be him. That's pre-civilization. That was before Earth had language." Kale stepped close, his voice low, almost gentle. "No, not me. But he was my ancestor, and something in our blood remembers." In orbit, a quiet transmission left the Dravari command ship. "Begin emergency genetic reconvergence scans. Humanity's timeline is compromised. We may be dealing with a Class 0 echo." Far across the galaxy, hidden in the dark, something ancient heard the message and stirred. Across the galactic fringe, in a vault older than most stars, A machine stirred. It didn't blink. It didn't breathe. It simply activated. For the first time in 300,000 years, buried beneath the collapsed core of a forgotten moon, it pulsed to life, drawing energy from the residual gravitational shearing. Crystal logic lit up. Frozen nanominds hummed. It had one function: terminate Class 0 anomaly. Coordinates locked. Arena Prime. Target, Kale Stratus. Back in the arena, Kale sat, alone in the observation deck. The place was dark, empty save for the distant roar of the crowd watching a lesser match. His hands rested on the railing. Relaxed. Too relaxed. A soft voice broke the silence. "You're not just human, are you?" Kyle didn't look up. "Depends how you define it." Dr. Lena Morrow, xenogeneticist and former UN conflict psychologist, stepped into view. She wore a formal lab cloak, but her eyes were tired, not from age, from fear. "We've sequenced your blood 3 times," she said. "Something's off. Human base pairs, yes, but the junk code? It's not junk, it's instructions. Ancient ones. Some of them even reference extinct amino structures, pre-RNA." Kale met her gaze. "You ever hear of the war that was buried?" She blinked. "Myth. Dravari creation legend. A species older than time. The first war form. They say it was a lie to keep colonies loyal." Kyle turned back to the arena. "It wasn't a lie. It was a burial." He tapped his temple. "I dream of cities no map remembers. Weapons that kill by remembering what you are. I see machines that don't move but unmake motion." Lena paled. "You're having genetic memory reactivations." "No, I'm having witness memories." "What does that mean?" she whispered. "It means I didn't live that life," he said. "But someone in me did." Out in the void, the machine arrived. It didn't need weapons. It was a weapon. A construct called Talos 1, shaped like a black tetrahedron, invisible to most sensors, cloaked in inertial blindness and temporal dampening fields. It entered Arena, Prime's upper orbit in silence. No warning. No signal. Just a presence. Kale felt it before the alarms, a pressure behind his eyes, a ripple in the rhythm of the world. Then the siren screamed. Orbital intrusion. Non-registered vessel. Power signature. Unknown. Mass reading. Incalculable. The crowd erupted in panic. Lena clutched a rail. "What the hell is that?" Kale stood, face tight. "That's not an empire. That's a failsafe." On the surface of the tetrahedral craft, lines of script flared. Not any modern tongue. Something older, fractal, recursive. A language meant to interface with creation itself. Kale closed his eyes. "It's here for me." "Why?" He opened them. "Because the last time one of us woke up, the stars screamed. Talos 1 didn't descend. It manifested. One moment, it was in orbit. The next, a spike of it existed in the arena, materializing as a vertical shard of dark matter, humming with memory. Kale stepped into the center of the arena alone. The shard pulsed once, acknowledging his presence. Every camera in the system shut off, not by hacking, by compliance. Kyle placed one hand on the shard. "I remember what I am." The arena cracked. Reality flexed. The shard broke open, revealing nothing, not a void, a concept of erasure. The final solution. But Kyle didn't flinch. "I don't accept the erasure," he whispered. "Not this time." And something in the blood, something old, buried, and furious, awoke. His back arched. A lattice of golden light flared from his spine, outlining patterns unseen by living species. The ground beneath his feet reformed. The shard froze. A deep voice echoed from Kale's mouth. But it wasn't his voice. Reclamation protocol interrupted. Sentinel Class Null countersign confirmed. Talos 1 began to shake, then scream, then collapse. The failsafe had met something older than its creators. The audience never saw it. The feeds blacked out. But the Empires felt it. One man, alone, had stared down a god machine, and it had blinked. They tried to suppress the footage. Every sensor in the arena had been blinded, every live feed scrubbed, every external network terminal severed before data could leak. It didn't matter. Within 12 hours, the event had been replicated across thousands of black market quantum nodes. Someone, somehow, had recorded it psychically. The image of Kale standing before the collapsing shard burned into dream feeds, whisper nets, and deep void mind forums. The human who denied oblivion. The arena god. The last echo of the first flame. The names multiplied like spores. So did the fear. On Dravari Prime, High Executor Toll scratched a groove into his obsidian desk with a single claw. "You said he was human." "He is," the analyst whispered, "but also not." "Explain." "He is not genetically enhanced, no known augmentations, but we've confirmed that he resonates with pre-sapient quantum signals. Signals only, found in untranslated stellar ruins, places we abandoned as too dangerous to study, places that respond to him." The executor stood slowly. "You're saying he can command relics?" "No. We're saying he remembers them." In the human embassy on Luna 5, Kale sat alone in the debrief chamber, lit only by the dull blue hum of protective wards. Across from him sat Admiral Rena Calder, United Terran Command flanked by 2 combat mages and a silent AI shell. "Do you know what you did?" she asked. Kale gave a tired smile. "Stopped a failsafe." "No. You overrode it. That thing was built to erase any trace of Class Zero. Threats. You didn't just survive, you commanded it." Kyle looked her in the eyes. "I didn't command it, I outranked it." Everyone in the room went still. Across the stars, in systems too dead for maps, relic sites began to awaken. Structures built by the architects of sentient physics, shrines that bled probability, machines that could rewrite time but forgot how. Now, they stirred. And they remembered his blood. One by one, tomb worlds long thought inert began transmitting again, not in any language, not in light. They pulsed identity, and the identity they sought was Kale. Kale dreamed again. He stood in a city carved from planets, streets of molten metal, gravity singing like a choir. Around him were titans, not gods, but deciders of law, creatures made from thought, wrapped in armor of bone and memory. They knelt, all of them, and in the dream, Kyle, who was both himself and someone else, spoke. "We lit the stars to warn the Alkei, dark. Now the dark returns, and we must burn again." He woke up gasping. The walls of his chamber flexed. The AI scrambled to adjust gravity fields to stabilize his neural bleed. "Vitals surging," it warned. "Subject is destabilizing." Kyle wiped sweat from his eyes. "No, I'm just remembering how to be awake." The empires met in secret, under a white sun with no name. Vexari queens in telepathic trance, Dravari war nobles cloaked in entropy fields, and a single Uric general who'd torn out his honor crest to speak without chains. They spoke one truth aloud. Kale must not be allowed to leave the arena, not alive, not even as a memory. They began to assemble a tribunal, not of law, but of erasure. Something older than treaties, older than wars. An execution not of flesh, but of presence. A being who remembered too far back could never be allowed to walk freely again, not even among humans. But Kyle already knew. He could feel them gathering, like insects around a candle that refused to die. He turned to Lena Morrow in the human command wing. They're going to come for me now. She nodded. They're terrified. They should be. He looked up, eyes glowing faintly gold in the dim light. Because I'm not just remembering anymore. The fire that built the first war machines. He raised his hand. The air around it shimmered. Symbols floated around his fingers like gravity-charged feathers. Is waking up in me. They called it a tribunal, but there was no defense, no jury, only judgment. The three empires convened their ancient rite under the ash-glass dome of Nulvor, a location outlawed even in myth. No star marked its orbit, no chart acknowledged its presence. It had only one purpose: to erase what should not be. At the center of the chamber stood Kale, bound by chains that didn't touch his skin. They floated an inch from his body, composed of gravity knots and timeline stutters. Weapons of unhistory. He wore no armor, carried no blade. Yet his presence weighed heavier than any forge-born warlord or engineered demigod present. Above him, the triune eyes hovered, 3 judges, each representing one of the great empires. The Dravari executor, mind split across 6 dimensions, a Vexari. Hive orator, wrapped in flesh made from extinct queens, the Uric bone judge, whose voice had shattered suns during trial songs. Each of them had voted unanimously. Kyle must be erased, not killed. Not imprisoned, erased. From memory, from data, from quantum records, from time itself. Speak your last, the bone judge thundered, and we will unmake the lie you represent. Kale looked up, calm, empty-handed. No. The Dravari executor narrowed all 6 of its eyes. No to what? To the idea that you can judge me. You don't understand what I am. Not really. The Vexari orator clicked through 1,000 frequencies at once. You are a danger to all. You wake technologies meant to sleep forever. You resonate with dead gods. You bend reality without understanding it. You're wrong, Kale said, stepping forward. The chains tried to bind him tighter, but bent, twisted, whined like dying stars. I understand exactly what I am, and so do you. He raised his hand slowly. The air cracked. Lines of light formed behind him, shapes not meant to be drawn. Glyphs older than time, written in the language of causality. I am not an echo of the past. I am its reckoning. Suddenly the dome trembled. Above, the ash glass rippled, reflecting not the stars but the beginning. The moment before, time started. Before rules. Before physics, the place where Kale came from. Lena Morrow, watching through a secure feed in orbit, gasped. He's not summoning power. He's remembering it. The AI beside her couldn't process the feed. It simply shut down. Back in the chamber, the judges tried to react. The Vexari launched a mental spike swarm. The Dravari unfolded a logic bomb keyed to Kale's DNA. The Orcs screamed an anti-song meant to disrupt willpower. All 3 attacks hit, and all 3 dissolved. Kale didn't shield himself. He absorbed them. His eyes glowed like forges. His voice was layered now, his own, and thousands of others, deep and distant, speaking through him. Your tribunal is broken, because it's built on fear. Fear of what came before you. Fear of me. He took another step. The gravity chains shattered. The judges tried to retreat, but there was no time. Kyle raised both hands. The glyphs spun around him like twin halos. You are not gods. You are caretakers, and I am the one you were meant to guard against. But I am no longer asleep. Light flared. The dome cracked. Kyle's power didn't explode outward. It folded in, pulling the tribunal into a microcosm of pure consequence. The judges vanished in a whisper of memory, and Kale stood alone, breathing hard, the glyphs fading. In orbit, Every Empire's observers stared at their screens in silence. Kale Stratus had just done what no force in history had dared. He broke the Tribunal of Unmaking, and he survived. No one knew what to call him now. But everyone knew the truth. Humanity was no longer a minor species. It had become a myth. The arena was quiet, not just silent, reverent. Word had spread faster than ships could fly, not through data packets or diplomatic channels, but in the tremor of gravity wells, in the tilt of stars that remembered how to shiver. Kale Stratus had destroyed the Tribunal of Unmaking, not by force, by being. The memory of it echoed across empires, through the dream webs of the Vexari, the war chants of the Uric, and the probability oracles of the Dravari. Each species tried to parse what had happened. None could. But they all agreed on one thing. The human could no longer be ignored. In the central chamber of Arena Prime, Kale stood alone, not by decree, by choice. His armor was gone. No banners hung behind him. No champions waited to fight. There was nothing left to prove. Only one truth remained, and he had carved it into the foundations of empires. You do not stand above humanity. You stand because it allows you to. The doors opened. 100 delegates stepped into the arena. Not warlords, not judges, not assassins, leaders, emperors, hive mothers, speakers of the tides. The first kneeling began with the Uric general, whose name had once meant breaker of moons. He dropped his crest to the ground and sank to one knee. I bow not to power, he said, voice low, but to the one who reminded us what it is to possess it without cruelty. The Vexari orator followed, its segmented limbs folding in a pattern. That, for them, meant submission without humiliation. You carry the fire of origin, it clicked. We thought it dead, but in you, it breathes again. And the Dravari? They didn't kneel. They collapsed. Their entire delegation fainted, overwhelmed by Kale's presence, a resonance feedback loop triggered by his living quantum field. It wasn't magic. It wasn't violence. It was the truth asserting itself. In orbit, Lena Morrow wept. Not from fear, from awe. This isn't just HFY, she whispered to herself. This is humanity returning to the stars as something older than myth. A force of memory and meaning. Beside her, a dozen non-human dignitaries stood in silence. None could speak, because they'd just watched a man erase the concept of inferiority from his species. Kyle finally broke the stillness. I didn't want this, he said softly, his voice carrying across the arena without amplification. I didn't come here to rule or to rise. He looked at the leaders kneeling before him. I came here because I was tired of forgetting. He pointed toward the stars, now visible through the open ceiling. There's something out there. Something that remembers us too well. Something we once fought. And if we don't stand together? He trailed off, letting the silence complete the sentence. It was enough. The next day, the arena treaty was restructured, no longer a mockery of balance or a theater of supremacy. The arena would become a sanctuary, a place where conflict became communion, where the old blood price was replaced with shared fire. And Kyle? He didn't stay. He walked into the void alone, heading toward the ruins that whispered his name in radiation pulses and gravitational sighs, toward whatever it was that feared him enough to send god weapons in secret. Some said he was a relic, others said he was a messiah, but all agreed on one thing. He was proof. Proof that humanity was not weak or lost or behind. It had merely been asleep. Now it was awake, and the stars would never forget it again. Final arena record, logged by Arena Prime AI Core. Neutral, combatant, Kale Stratus. Human matches fought, 38 empires broken, 3 times injured, 0 status, unknown legacy, eternal. A human stepped into the arena. 3 empires fell before he took a scratch. Inscription on the gate of the new arena, written in a language no one taught, but everyone understands.